This is a story about how one of history's greatest scholars went on an incredible journey, all for a single piece of knowledge. But the most powerful lesson he learned didn't come from a dusty old book. It came from a humble baker he met completely by chance. Let's get into it. So to really get a sense of who we're talking about here, just listen to this. Another giant of Islamic scholarship, Imam al-Shafi'i, said of him, "I left Baghdad and did not leave behind me a man more pious or more knowledgeable than him." Now that's not just a nice compliment, right? That's a massive testament to a man who was an absolute legend in his time. And it makes the humility he's about to show all the more incredible. All right, so our story kicks off with a journey, but not just any journey. The Imam decides to undertake this monumental trip that would really test his limits and, as it turns out, his humility. So, who exactly was Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal? Well, for anyone who might not know, this man was a titan. He was born in Baghdad, founded an entire school of Islamic law, and put together one of the most famous collections of prophetic traditions ever, the Musnad. In his world, he was a superstar intellectual. And his dedication? It was on another level. I mean, imagine traveling from modern-day Iraq all the way to Syria, a brutal, grueling journey back then, probably on foot or by camel. And why? Not for money, not for fame, but to check the authenticity of one single prophetic tradition. That's the kind of commitment we're dealing with here. So after this long, exhausting journey, the Imam finally arrives in a new city. He's tired, he's hungry, and he's a total stranger. He heads to the local mosque, just looking for a place to rest for the night. But even though he was famous everywhere else, here, nobody had a clue who he was. But instead of a warm welcome, he gets this. The mosque servant sees him, just some tired-looking traveler, and immediately tells him to get out. No compassion, no welcome, just a strict rule. Now, you'd think one of the most respected men of his generation might, pull rank. But he doesn't. He just gently pleads his case, explaining that he's a traveler and he's got nowhere else to sleep. And the response? It was just ice cold. The servant gets even tougher, threatening to call the guards on him. And just like that, this great scholar is unceremoniously kicked out onto the street. And this part is what really gets me. Imam Ahmad could have ended the whole situation in a second, just by saying his name. But he didn't. Why? Because he was worried that using his fame to get special treatment would be an act of arrogance. His humility was literally more important to him than his own comfort. Just let that sink in. So there he is, cast out on the street with nowhere to go. But then, from a nearby bakery, a light in the darkness emerges. A kind baker, who saw the whole thing go down, decides he can't just stand by and let this happen. Wow, what a complete 180. The baker not only calls out the servant's harshness, but he immediately offers this total stranger a place to stay in his own home. He just sees a person in need and acts with pure kindness. The baker's kindness wasn't just him being a nice guy in the moment. It was rooted in these really deep principles of hospitality. He gave the stranger food and a roof over his head. And get this, for 3 whole days, he didn't ask a single question. Didn't ask his name, where he was from, nothing. He just honored him as a guest. Okay, so this is where the story takes a fascinating twist. While he's staying with the baker, the Imam starts to notice something. A simple, constant habit that, it turns out, holds a really powerful secret. Just picture the scene. The baker is at work, kneading dough. And with every push, every fold, he's just quietly whispering, astaghfirullah, which means, I seek forgiveness from God. It wasn't some grand performance, it was just this quiet, constant act of devotion. And the scholar was absolutely captivated by it. So when the Imam finally asked him about it, the baker explained his philosophy, and it's so beautifully simple. He calls it cleansing before sweetening. First, he's always seeking God's forgiveness, basically cleansing his soul. And then he makes his prayers, because he believes they're much more likely to be accepted from a clean slate. And now, this is where all the pieces of the story, the tough journey, being rejected at the mosque, the baker's simple kindness, they all crash together in one breathtaking moment. The baker then says something absolutely incredible. He tells the Imam that, because of his constant habit of seeking forgiveness, God has answered every single prayer he's ever made. Well, all of them except for one. Of course, the Imam is leaning in now, totally hooked. You would be too, right?
What could possibly be the one wish that this man of such simple, powerful faith has not had fulfilled?
The baker's one unanswered prayer was this: to one day meet the great scholar, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Yup, the very man who was, unknowingly, his guest. And here it is, the stunning reveal. The Imam, probably moved to tears, tells him, "God has answered your prayer. I am Ahmad ibn Hanbal." He explains that God didn't just bring him to the city, he literally had the mosque servant drag him to the baker's doorstep to answer that one final prayer. I mean, the irony is just so beautiful. Imam Ahmed traveled hundreds of miles searching for a piece of knowledge, while this humble baker, just through his sincere faith, had the greatest source of knowledge in the land delivered right to his door. And that really leaves us with this final thought, doesn't it? The Imam set out to teach and to learn, but in the end, he received a powerful lesson in humility, in faith, and in the mysterious ways prayers get answered. It really makes you wonder, who was the real teacher and who was the student on that fateful night?